also going to put on the live on Facebook so that I don't have to worry about that. Oh. Oh, Lord. It brought up my Facebook, that's all. And here I go. I'm going to broadcast now and see if we can we can do this thing. Why on earth did I think it was a good idea? If I reckon because of that way that screen works, when we get Margaret, I might get rid of my video and that will be a nice square thing, but let's have a look at that when it happens. Here we go. We're now broadcasting live to all attendees, apparently. So we'll probably now see people, pop in. And while that's happening, first thing we need to say is that we're here on Jaja Warring Tangerang country, of course. And hello to all of you, to all our attendees and to this terrific lineup of writers. For this, our big Bendigo big book, the breakup bash. Christie looking at me, hoping I can get it out, and I can't. So the BBBBBBB, we're here with a bevy of beautiful writers to talk about to books, to finish up our book club, to finish up this live event. It's a long time since we did a live one like this, way back with our Mother anthology. True, I know you were part of that. So it's been a long time since that. It's taken us all this energy to try it again, but it's a good idea. So we will try it, and I'm hoping the next hour and a half will be terrific. I wanted to thank everybody who's been involved in our backstory for the many months, every week in, week out. It's been fantastic to see people log on and have a look. We've done tens of thousands of views on our backstory interviews, which has been just remarkable. We've spoken to so many different people. I want to thank the writers and publishers and our interviewers, who include Sarah Mayer-Cox and Cecile Shanahan, who are here with us tonight, and Prue Mansfield and Di Dempsey, did not forget anybody, Sam Kane, Steve Kendall, Jenny Mitchell. It's been fantastic to have these interviews, and of course they're all up on the website. I'd like to thank Bendigo Venues and Events, who have supported this brilliantly, as well as especially David Stretch and Terran Connolly, who are the people who have to do all the work for us. So that's been just absolutely wonderful to have happening, and we've learned a lot and enjoyed it immensely. For anybody joining us, if you want to be with us on, you're probably on Facebook now, which is running live. We're running live to Facebook, and the link is there now. If you want to chat to us and say hello, turn on your chat down the bottom of your screen, and you can participate by saying hello, asking a question, sending out a comment, whatever you like, and we'll all be looking at that. Turn on your panelists and attendees, I think, is the thing that you'll get up there, all attendees, and you can send us any comments that you like. Anything along the way. You can just say Merry Christmas if that's what suits. Cecile and Sarah are here with us as well. Sarah has done a fantastic job of making herself into a reindeer. Thank you. And Cecile has done a brilliant job supporting us with backstory throughout the whole year. It is almost too. Thank you to you both, and I hope that you'll join in with comments and questions along the way. I'll just start with Sarah. How did your first Forest Street literary fair go on the weekend? You branched into giving Bendigo a new thing, and I know that a few of these people were there with you on the weekend too. You didn't have enough to do, did you, Sarah?
Look, I just had a lazy old 3 weeks, so I thought I'd just gather together some pals, and some people, you know, chose to ignore us, like Sally Rippin. She had family birthday parties that she thought was more important than coming and meeting the young readers in Bendigo. But apart from that, yeah, we had a great time, and it's going to be the first of many, I hope.
Great, that's great. Well done. I'm pleased that you've, you know, as I said, you're never short of an idea, Sarah. So I'm pleased that you shared that with the people of Bendigo. It's great timing for that as well. Now, I'm going to get going with some people. Let's put you on to speaker view so that we can get the person who's speaking first up, and I'm going to introduce everybody, and we're going to have a little bit of a run around to see what they've been doing during this time. So I'm going to start with Christie Nieman. Christie's debut novel was As Stars Fall, and that was about ecosystems and grief. And her short fiction appears in many magazines, and she is a contributing editor on the anthology Just Between Us, Mothers and Others, and also We Too, which was stories from the Australian movement. And the new novel, which is Where We Begin, is the one that I'm going to ask Christie about. You're one of those writers who have brought out a new book in this very tough year. So tell us about Where We Begin.
Yes, I launched it into a stage 4 lockdown. So that was fun. 5 years of work, and then I'm sitting alone in a room to launch a book. But it was an experience, you know, I'll remember it. This is the book here. I'll get it up nice and close because that cover, I love the cover. It's a young adult take on a Gothic novel, and it's really modelled on those Victorian Gothics, like from the Brontes and Robert Louis Stevenson and stuff. It's about a young woman from inner city Sydney, and she leaves in a state of distress her parents' house and her boyfriend and everything she's known, and we find out a bit more about that state of distress as the novel goes along. And she travels through the night and day and night and into the countryside of central Victoria, out of her comfort zone. And she's going to the house of her grandparents who she's never met. And she probably hasn't asked enough questions about why she's never met them, but who at 17 is on top of all that sort of thing. And once she gets there, she becomes really enmeshed in the histories, the various histories that are going on there in the landscape and the family, and all these things that she never knew about, which is classic kind of Gothic stuff where repressed matter threatens to return. That's kind of the whole feeling of the novel.
It's funny, as you were saying that, I was thinking, how many books do you read where you want to shout at the character, ask this, why don't you say
Don't
that?
go in there.
Well, it's more the sort of the conversational thing, and it's something that you know, I'm just wondering, and I wasn't going to do this, but is there anyone else who uses that as a technique, that, you know, that you basically know the reader will be saying, why did that person say that? You know, that you've got a rotten haircut. Why did they say? Is that something, Sally? You're shaking your head. I mean, nodding your head.
I think for me that is reminiscent more of the pantomimes we used to see as children, or the you know.
Oh, great! I've written a pantomime. No.
But I think that's what I was thinking of. But I also think it's creating drama, isn't it, Christie? That is just this sense of tension and drama, and who is more about drama than teenagers, right? So
yeah, exactly right. And that's that Victorian Gothic thing. It is that heightened drama. But actually, the thing I really love about it is that it actually deals with quite real human fallibilities. That's the beauty of the Gothic, as opposed to like sci-fi or fantasy, which, you know, I don't want to diss them. They also do all of that. But yeah, it kind of does it in this heightened, quite almost stylistic way. And I think that's what I'm playing with there, that kind of unasked question. And the thing about the Gothic is the situation is often such that those questions, it's not a normal scenario that you're in. So the asking of the questions becomes not an easy, effortless thing the way it might be. in some
yeah.
conversational situation.
But you're right, it never was when you were that age, and you look back and later and think, you know, why didn't I know then what I know now, and say that as well. Just for people that I'm not sure that our live chat doesn't matter if it's not, but I'm not sure that if you're out there and you can see live chat, I've got a feeling the way we've posted this, because there's so many people, that we're not getting people making on the mentioning. We're not getting people able to go into that live chat. They're able to watch us. They're there, but they're not able. So we're going to talk among ourselves. If that's the case, if it's not the case, pop something up. If you're out there and you can see that chat, let us know. That'd be good. The next people, we're going to go back to Sally Rippin, and we're going to do a duet on this one. Sally Rippin, everybody will know, has published over 70 books, won so many awards and sold more than 5 million copies in 14 languages. And their work includes the Polly and Buster trilogy, as well as Billy B. Brown and the Hey Jack series for young readers. Extraordinary output, amazing amount of work, and now television as well. Chris Kennett, who's here with us as well, is now working with Sally Rippin. So we're going to do them together. Illustrator and author, very well known also in Bendigo, much loved, I would say, in Bendigo. Created 2 picture books, Alpha Monsters and Rudy Toot, which I can remember is where I first met Chris Kennett many, many years ago. As well as illustrating picture books for Scholastic, and he designed characters for the Andy Griffiths TV show, The Day My Butt Went Psycho. They had to say butt instead of bum, apparently. And has illustrated a number of the Little Golden books in the Star Wars series, which makes him very, very famous as well. So you two have been launching a plotting for a new book series. So tell us about your new series together.
You want me to start because I did the words, you did the pictures?
Yes, well, it was your concept, Sally, so I think you should absolutely take the lead here.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I'm joining in as a token local because I have a writing retreat in Castlemaine, and I plan to be up there within a few years full time. So that's why I'm claiming to be part of the area. So thanks so much for having me. Yeah, so I had seen some of Chris's illustrations on Instagram and love his work, and I'd been plotting a series for really, really early readers, because a lot of feedback that I was getting from parents and booksellers was how there still is a little bit of a gap between the read aloud picture book for the very young preschool reader and Billy B. Brown, which you have to have a certain level of reading competency to be able to go onto that, even though it's quite easy and quite accessible. And so all the books that I could think of as those really early readers were just using those really, really simple, what they call CVC words, so consonant, vowel, consonant words. I thought, how can you write a whole story just full of CVC words? So I thought, well, maybe I don't write the whole story. Maybe I write some of the story with that and then just highlight a few words that children can sound out for themselves. And that way it becomes still a collaboration in the way that a picture book is. In the way that a picture book is to be read aloud to a child, and the child, I guess, absorbs the story through the illustrations. This one, the child has a little bit more input because we want to encourage them to sound out some of the words for themselves. So it's still to read with the child, but then as the child develops confidence and learns a little bit of reading potentially with a parent or at school, they'll be able to read out the last word on every line. So I wanted to create a world that is like the world that will be familiar but different to kids. So Chris and I have come up with the world of monsters. And this is where it was been so fantastic to really collaborate really closely with Chris and our publisher Marissa at Hardy Grant, because everything that I hoped for this world, Chris has completely brought to the table, and he's going to show you this in a little while, because I wanted it to be something that was very collectible. So in a way, I guess the way that I pitched it to my publishers is a little bit like Mr. Men, but good. So, so you get one character per book that you can identify with, and then collect all these little characters themselves. And we thought monsters is really enticing. It's kind of gender neutral. It also means that they don't have you can't tell what race they are or what generation. They feel like something quite classic. And Chris will show you some of the pictures now, and he's just taken my ideas and taken them so much further than I could have hoped. So it's been super, super exciting, and we launch them next year.
There we go.
So I'm going to let you say something about these, Chris.
Yes. So I'm assuming everyone can see the share screen at the moment.
Yep.
So this was a little teaser that came out a couple of weeks ago. The monsters are coming. There are going to be 10 books in this series. So there are 10 individual little monsters, which as an illustrator is incredibly fun, but also quite daunting as well, because all 10 characters had to be designed from the very beginning. I didn't have the luxury of waiting for book 5 in order to design the character for book 5, for example. So every character had to be set and designed right from the beginning. So we're launching with 4 books to begin with. Oh, sorry, my computer isn't cooperating, of course. Bear with me.
Yeah, we are.
So while you're filling with that, Chris, so we decided that, yes, we have a lot of different characters. I'll pass it over on to you.
Sorry. The big reveal. Yeah, so these are the 4 launch titles that we're leading with next March, and who is Mary, the little witch character, Longleg Pete, and Hairy Sam, and the 2 twin characters who are Deb and Dot. So they are heaps of fun.
Only 4? Who launches with 4, Chris Kennett? It's a lot of books to launch with.
The secret is to write very short books, Rosemary. That's how you get lots of books out there. Not long novels. They're really a commitment. Little short books, then you can do a lot of them, can't you, Chris? Chris,
still
laugh at that because not many words, lots of pictures, right?
Yes. Well, I could just squeeze in 4 for this end half of 2020. I've actually done 6 already, because there's 2 waiting in the wings to come out later next year as well. But so these will be the first 4 to whet the appetite in the first half of 2021.
I'm actually looking at them. I believe this is the first time they've sort of been aired too.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, this is an exclusive, if you will. And I should also take this opportunity to say thank you to you, Rosemary, because as you say, we did meet all those years ago.
We did.
And a very early championer of my work, and given me lots of opportunities over the years. So
that's
incredibly grateful.
No, that's great. I'm sure I was just lucky to fall across you at that time when you were just making all this stuff happen, and it was so colourful. I'm going to actually ask Sarah what she thinks of this new design.
Yeah, look, I think it's wonderful. I've known Sally and Kennett for Sally and Kennett. We're going to mash you together. What will you be? You won't be Brangelina. You'll be something. You'll be
Kennett.
Kippen and Brennett or something. Anyway, look, I'm so excited because I think what Sally and Chris have done is brought together the best of Chris's fabulous illustrations. He's got such a great way of bringing characters to life, and of course Sally is such a wordsmith, and what I love about it is that at the moment there's a huge, the reading wars have reignited again, and sadly a lot of trade books go out the window when the reading wars come into play. And a book like this is fabulous because it shows people that you can do really good trade books, and you can still have lots of fun, and they can be educational, and they can be a fantastic, as Sally says, a fantastic bridge from children going from beautiful trade picture books into beautiful novels. So yeah, look, I'm really excited to see them. And for those of you who get a chance to meet Sally and Chris in the flesh at Bendigo Writers Festival events in future, bring your children along. You know, you will be very, very happy and satisfied that you have.
Sarah's a very a big critic of words that don't get that rhythm right. And look at this, they line up fast to start the day, they go to class, then they can play. Sally knows her stuff, I think, here.
Yeah, but more than that, she's not, I think the difference between what Sally is doing and what some other people have done is that story is driving it. Yeah. And the characters are driving it. It's not the tail wagging the dog. It's not saying I have to find words that rhyme, and so I'm going to find these really bizarre rhymes and contrive them so that the meter and the rhyming works. And you know, children smell that a mile off.
Yep. By the way, we got a hello, Briley. I think there is a comments happening. It's too mysterious. I think they've all gone to Monster School, so I'm not going to go there. But the wonderful thing is we are recording, and we do seem to be getting some people able to comment in that logging on thing. So let's just forge ahead. Thanks. Oh, there she is.
Rosemary, can I just jump in for 2 seconds?
Sure, please do.
I just wanted to say well done to Chris and Sally, but also where were these 6 months ago when we were in lockdown and I had a preppy that was learning to read and I only had the boring readers from school. And,
yes.
So I'm very glad they're coming, because should we ever be in that situation again, at least I know that I'll have something fun and interesting that he'll be able to sink his teeth into. So
yes,
well
true. Yes, thanks.
Forward to seeing them and reading them with him.
Thanks, Cecile. Because True says on the comments that they're like a whole classroom of books, and that's one of the things you look for in those sort of preschool readers. So yeah, I'm sure Cecile will be testing them out. We'll go back to the gallery here, and moving right along to Nicole Kelly, who's a bit of a newcomer to this group, because Nicole, and I'm busting to ask you if you're related to Ned Kelly, a teacher and writer living in regional Victoria, and we are a little bit out of our really close zone because we don't stick to just our own area. Published a number of short stories and anthologies, recently released this first novel, which is called Lament, and it's a reimagining of the life of Ned Kelly. So please tell us about Ned Kelly and whether in fact you're related to him, Nicole.
Well, it's lovely to be here with you, and that is the first question that everybody asks, and sadly, no, I'm not. I married a Kelly. I married into them, so not related, but I grew up in northeast Victoria, which is prime Kelly country, almost under the big Ned Kelly statue. I lived in Glenrowan for quite a while, so this story has kind of been rattling around for a couple of decades, I hate to say now, and it took me about 7 years to write because I'm a teacher and I had a couple of kids in between, so between writing and editing it took quite a while to get here. But it's a reimagining of the Kelly story if the siege at Glenrowan had worked. So where would they have gone next? And how the lives would have changed, how history would have changed. So it's been a huge experience this year for my first novel, and my first sort of 18 months of really getting into writing, because I sort of had just been pottering along with it before then, to come at it and get it published with Hawkeye Books, which is fabulous. So I think coming from the northeast, though, everybody's got a Kelly story, like literally everyone I've spoken to. It's either they're related, or I'm sure he stole someone's great-grandfather's horse. He's always doing that. So it's really lovely because lots of people have this really personal connection to the Kelly story that's been passed through the generations. So it's
You're particularly interested in landscape, aren't you? In landscape, and therefore this one is obviously set very much in Kelly country. Obviously.
Kelly country to start with, and then I'm in Beaufort, which is near Ballarat, and so of course Ballarat was big and bustling in 1880, so where else would he have come but probably down this way somewhere, so that's where it led in the end. But it's been great to sort of think about what the Kellys would have been if it had worked, because I think he sits in the subconscious of a lot of people still.
Has Kelly become someone you can do whatever you like with? You can reimagine.
Yeah, I think so. I think I was really aware of being sensitive to the fact that people within the Kelly story have descendants. And I think that was something that I really took into the novel, of thinking, okay, how would I like how these people were portrayed? Because obviously it's from a first person perspective. So Ned is going to think, you know, not very well of some people. That's just the way it's going to be. But it was really interesting at my launch, which again was launched in the middle of a pandemic over Zoom, which was, you know, interesting, but great because it meant lots of people could be there from all around the country, lots of family and friends. I had a cousin of the Hearts, so a relative from Greta, and they came onto the Zoom and sort of announced themselves, and I was horrified. I thought, oh my goodness, this lady is going to absolutely can me and my book. And she was beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and said she'd loved it. And so yeah, it was really interesting from that perspective. I got, you know, first-hand knowledge of making sure you do the right thing by the descendants, but also trying to stay, you know, exciting and of the book as well.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. You'd think that really, you know, Ned, given his history, wouldn't be too many things you could. I mean, it's not as though you're going to make him kill somebody, are you?
You know,
anyway,
he's a bad guy generally thought of. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Pam Harvey. Yeah, she is nodding at me. You're a lecturer and researcher in health studies, and you've also studied the way you write. Really, you did adolescent illness narratives in fiction. So that's obviously, it sets you up very well to do all your many novels for children and for young adults, including Sheoak's Equestrian School series and a latest book, which is under the pen name Juno Harvey, is Being Bronwyn. But we're going to talk today about your other latest book. Remind me when it came out, but it's a rather timely title, I have said to you, and I'm not sure you're going to agree with me on this, but it's The Best Last Thing to Do. What's that one about, Pam?
Thanks, Rosemary. Yeah, look, I've had a great year because I set up my own little publishing company. So there's my Sheoaks, which I think the covers are beautiful, and they're from a local graphic designer. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this one, which was launched in October silently because I didn't do anything about it really. The Best Last Thing to Do. And Christie will understand this. This is my PhD novel. It's been a long time in the making and been through many editing processes. And it ties into the fact that I was studying adolescent illness narratives. So there's stories about people who are sick, but you don't often hear the adolescent voice. And in fact, when you do hear it, it's through fiction. So this is the story of two boys. One has diabetes and one thinks he has bipolar disorder, and their journey into discovering what it's like to live as a well person and what it's like to be sick, and the conflict that arises that, with a little bit of climate change thrown in because there's a major flood which separates the boy with diabetes from everyone else, and he suffers because he hasn't got his insulin with him. It's interesting, you know. When I was researching my PhD, I read over 60 books that were award-winning books for young adults, looking for books that had protagonists with illness in them, and found very few, and found only one that had a protagonist with diabetes, which is actually extraordinary, I think, in this day and age when type 2 diabetes especially is on the rise in younger people. So I had to have someone with diabetes in this book because it needs to be told. We need to hear the narratives from adolescents struggling with lifelong illnesses like diabetes.
I think
so
sorry, Pam, I was going to say, I think the literature world might have caught up with you, because it sounds to me like a lot of these kinds of stories when, you know, they all used to be very healthy young people in gangs, like Enid Blyton was always gangs of very healthy people. Cecile and Sarah will probably agree with me here, because that was sort of the narrative of normalising. And you have obviously been working on, you said, you know, 60 books, and you couldn't find much about this particular illness, which is widespread. So it's almost as though you've been preparing for this next wave of writing.
Well, 1 in 10 adolescents has a chronic illness. There's a lot out there. And people are living now with really serious illness that they never used to live with. Cystic fibrosis, for example, people were often dying during adolescence and now they're living on. So they're voices that aren't heard very often. So I wanted to bring those voices up to the front. And fiction is the perfect way to do it.
Thinking Secret Garden. There's a one that was they put the little boy in a wheelchair, which, gosh, I love that book.
And I can jump puddles.
Oh yes, of course, Alan Marshall. Yeah.
But what you don't hear, that he was an adult writing about his childhood, so it's actually hearing adolescent voices or children's voices are rare. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Pam,
Baby Sitters Club had Stacey with diabetes when we were growing up, but that was about it.
Yeah.
Pam, I think what you've just, I've watched your journey for many years, and congratulations, Dr. Pam. And I think it's absolutely fabulous because the young people I've known that are discovering that they have diabetes or their parents are discovering they have bipolar, it's a really scary journey for the parents as well. And I think what you're able to do is not only provide a mirror for those young people to look into and say, hey, the world is going to be okay, it's going to be shitty for a while, but I can get through, but also for the parents who are often in a place where they want to read about normalizing what's going on for them. So I think too often we think young adult fiction is only for young adults, when really those of us who write, or I don't write it, but people who do write young adults know that you often have to write it better than other books.
It's funny, isn't it? My brother read this book, which is always a bit, he's a teacher, and goodness, and he rang me up and he said, I really liked that. And we started talking about, the illness journey of these boys. And I said, you can put in young adult books what you can't put in adult books. They are these are life-changing books, young adult books. And it's funny how people don't realise that, and we all have always known.
Gosh, Sarah, Cecile just interviewed Barry Johnsberg, and I was shocked when I realised what was in that book. That interview is on Backstory. It's quite shocking, isn't it? Oh, Margaret, hello! Hooray! I was just about to say we're going to add you in later. You must have.
I've been here and I've been listening to you and I've been loving everything, but I've been a disembodied voice. I was on the wrong Zoom link. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm so pleased that you got it though. Because
sorry to interrupt everyone.
No, please. That's great. I was about to say let's add it in. Well, we'll add you in later when I get another Zoom link. But I'm so pleased I didn't muck that up, because it's very easy to muck these things up.
It was in my trash folder. So
brilliant! Fault. Yeah, brilliant. That's things like that. I'm often in people's trash folders.
No.
Thank you, Pam, and thanks for that insight about about the things you can say and the way you can say it. That's brilliant to hear. Rachel Nightingale, I'm going to move to next, and she's there she is, right in the middle there. It's like a game of chess, isn't it? Rachel is the author of another Bendigo author of I hope I get this right, Rachel. I suddenly realised it is Taria.
Taria, yep.
Yeah, great. Yes, I suddenly thought all these years have I been saying it to myself and not getting it right. Tales of Taria. I think there's how many in that series now?
3.
3. Yep, I was going to say 3. Thank goodness for that. Columbine, the last one. I think the most recent one.
Pierrot's Song. Was the last one.
Great. Yeah. Playwright, educator, actor, PhD again. It was about, if we lose our education, our universities, how awful that would be, about the way literature impacts on our cultural stories. So there you go, another person who's used their time at the universities to then go on and find ways to write about things. Yeah, Tales of Taria are speculative fiction, And the question, I suppose, for you is, do you think because of the pandemic, and I know we're getting books about pandemic, and probably novels as well, do you think that your writing will be influenced by what you've experienced during the pandemic year?
I have gone in a completely different direction this year. First of all, I actually had a book released this year, but nobody knows about it because we had to cancel the launch. So actually, if you don't mind, I'll wave it around. So it's actually a beautiful book about mandalas that I did with a mandala artist. So it's actually non-fiction, and it's just got the most, I've got to show you one of Karen's mandalas. She just does the most stunning mandalas. So we were supposed to have a big launch in May for that, and of course it was all cancelled. So that was really disappointing. But I'm actually in the throes of research at the moment on a historical fiction book set in Papua New Guinea in the Second World War. It's based on the real experiences of my grandparents, and it's been really interesting researching it whilst the pandemic's been going on, because I can really relate so much. And I know that we're not dealing with a war here, but in terms of the emotions and the uncertainty and the not knowing, for the people who were living through that time, not knowing when the Japanese were going to invade, if they were going to invade, living with all the privations, watching the streets in Sydney and Queensland and so on being, having split trenches dug and sandbags put out, and people would be going and collecting their sand in the middle of Sydney to sort of set up against a possible invasion. So that sense of constant uncertainty and anxiety and just being in that mode of eternal sort of angst, I think that we've all experienced this year. It's been really interesting to kind of look back at that time and connect to it at an emotional level that I don't think I would have connected at before. That's what I've been up to.
Absolutely, and I think it's really given us a chance to understand better beyond the reading. Oh no, that's probably not a fair thing to say. Read better the histories about what went on during the Second World War.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had my own similar kind of experience to my grandmother. My grandmother waited 3 years for her husband to come home. I didn't quite have to wait that long, but my daughter was in France, and she flew out of France the day before they closed Orly Airport. So she was coming home from a very pandemic-ridden area, and we lost contact for 24 hours, and I didn't know if she was going to be stopped in Doha and whether she would actually make it home. So it was the longest 24 hours of my life. So that sense of not knowing, was just, and to imagine that my grandmother lived through that for 3 years. It really brings it home.
It does. And then some of the information that came back filtered back much more slowly. Sometimes I wish some of the information would filter back a bit more slowly, but indeed I think it has heightened our awareness of all that. Pam, you were just saying about your books being available in schools. I think somebody was, Margaret was asking you, and I didn't realise that this was your project, the She Oak series.
Oh yeah, She Oaks was my project. Yep. So they're available if people have bought them in, because they're in all the online bookstores.
All right, so it's online bookstores. What about your mandala book, Rachel?
Through Obscura Press online, and also through all the usual kind of online, Amazon and iBooks and all the usual kind of, I don't know if I'm not supposed to mention names, but all the usual channels.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of, and you're both, they're both, especially there's a whole world of people who read and follow these kinds of books that often in writers' festivals and things, as you keep telling me, there's all this stuff happening, which the mainstream publishers, if we rely on them, and I'm not having a go at them, but we don't necessarily get access to things like an illustrated book of mandalas.
Yeah,
What is a mandala? Explain to me.
So a mandala is an artwork that is specifically enclosed within a circle. And it's got an amazing history linked to every, like, it goes back to Sanskrit, it goes back to ancient times. It is across every major religion. It usually has deep religious significance for those religions. The Bendigo connection is that the Great Stupa is actually a mandala. If you could take up a drone, or if you could fly and looked at it from above, you would see it as a mandala. And for the Buddhist tradition, it is actually a depiction of heaven and the levels of heaven. So yeah, mandalas are just like, it was incredible to, I interviewed Karen Scott, who's the artist, and then I also interviewed many of her students and heard their stories about how mandala painting had really transformed their lives. So it was a fascinating project to be part of. Yeah, so hopefully we'll get to launch it next year.
Yeah, great.
A year late.
Yeah, great. Patrick White, of course, solid mandala, which is, but I don't think I'd ever really taken in what he meant by the solid mandala. I'd need to read that one again by the sounds of it. True. Let's move to poetry. Well, sort of poetry. Your most recent book is a hybrid of poetry and writing. You're a poet, performer, MC, editor and workshop presenter. You teach professional writing for Bendigo Kengan Institute and Victoria University. And this book of poems and prose is Butcher, Backer, His Story Maker. That was published this year, and we went this close to having it launched at the festival in May. So tell us a bit about that book.
Okay, yeah, sure. I was really interested in what Rachel was saying, because my book, Butcher Baker, History Maker, which is, of course, a bit of a play on that old rhyme with not the candlestick maker, but the history maker, his story with a hyphen. Plays on, it's written in verse, so it is a verse novel, but it also has elements of dialogue and song and quotations from a particular era in history, particularly the mid-Second World War and post-Second World War. And it's experimental in the way that it combines history, so actual happenings and events on a broader scale especially, with personal stories from the protagonist, who I'm quite close to, the family that it's about, I'm quite close to, and listened to these stories as I was growing up. And it's also, I've placed myself in the story too, in the epilogue section. It's in 5 sections, where I respond to, and also there's a series of interviews throughout, which are presented as dialogues, which show that sort of more historic element and how that's reimagined when we jump into the past. So the story is about the protagonist growing up in the 1940s and early 1950s. It's a coming of age story, but it's also about his journey as in the Castlemaine, set in Castlemaine, and it's about his journey through these really tumultuous times, attempting to achieve his dreams throughout this difficult time, and just how he responds to all the challenges and setbacks that come his way, particularly as the oldest of 5 boys. So there's a bit of a patriarchal theme running through it that I like to play around with the language and with how he responds through song and through quotations of the. So there's quite a lot of social history in there as well, because it is reflected through this protagonist, Ken, we'll call him, it's a pseudonym. He's the way that he relives that time and relives his experiences, and how that has affected my own writing and how I've developed as a writer over the last few years. It's taken 12 years to write in full. It was also my honours thesis project, which it's changed a lot since then, but that gave me the impetus to actually conduct those interviews with this very special man, and also to learn about his own relationship with his father. So it does cover, you know, the title refers back to those 3 generations. So how he related or didn't with his own father, and also how this man relates to his children, and how he talks about it. Sort of gives us a way of looking at how family relationships grow and change, and also it looks at how fiction is fluid as much as personal histories can shift over time, and the retelling can shift over time. So I'm really interested in all of those things. It sounds really complex. Hopefully it's an easier story. And like many of you have mentioned today, it wasn't launched in May or this year. We're waiting, myself, and it's through a Castlemaine publisher as well, an indie publisher, Birdfish Books, whose managing editor is Tegan Giganti, who's, you know, an accomplished writer and editor herself. And Tegan and I were at uni together back in 2010 to 12 at La Trobe, and she developed his publishing company, and I just thought that's a really nice fit to have a Castlemaine publisher publish a story about a Castlemaine family set in Castlemaine. So I like that idea of keeping it local, but also sort of showing, hopefully, throughout the story how far it can go and how people might relate to what Ken goes through throughout his lifetime. So.
I think we're discovering here so many developments in publishing and writing in the regions, and I'll say regions because I know a couple of you are coming from slightly outside our central Vic area. But it's just because I think when I first came to this area, when I first came to live between Castlemaine and Bendigo, that the writing thing, I know, I think you were at the uni, you with Sue Gillett, who did an amazing job. And she was the first person I sort of met and what she was doing, and Sue's moved away now. But it was on the cusp of kind of things happening. And then I met Chris Kennett. He was international, but now he's come back to working with someone in the region. You know, when you discover that Sally Rippin's in the area as well, and you know, Rachel moves here and starts working with on telling me about her family history and working with the spec fic people, and it's I guess I'm realizing for myself, Sarah, you'll probably chime in here, that there's something is taking its course, as Evelyn Waugh said, I think. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, look, I agree. I think I'm a Melbourne person. I grew up in Melbourne and moved here for love a long time ago, and discovered all my relatives 6 generations ago had been on the goldfields, and really where was I going to end up but in Bendigo. But I think what is amazing is that Bendigo has always been a city of entrepreneurs, and it's been through periods of great grief and depression and poverty in terms of material issues, but it's never been a poverty-stricken area in terms of ideas and culture. And if you look at the amazing artists who are here, the fact that we have, the Bendigo Bank started here, and that's revolutionised the concept of community banking. We have the Innovations Award here. We're a gastronomic city now. We were the first city in Australia to be a child-friendly city. There is just so much here that is good and is wholesome and is exciting, and I'm really loving watching it all come alive and watching people leaving the city in a way and saying, Well, it's nice to be beside the sea, and I love being beside the sea as well. But there's something about being inland and, you know, facing some of those hardships. And I think that's, for a writer, it's almost like being a poor artist starving away in a garret, being on country that is wild, that is strewn with granite, that is dry, that is dusty. It takes you back to what people have gone through in the past, and I think it calls you forward into what can grow out of human imagination. So I think it's probably, there is something magical. They do say that Dalesford is the, I think is the actual centre of
geographical
Victoria,
centre.
the geographical centre. And I know I got into a lot of trouble early on when I moved here because I went to a school and I read a fabulous book by Mem Fox about witches. And I was told in no uncertain terms not to read books about witches because the mothers that hadn't been invited to the witches' coven would be very, very disappointed. So it's lots of great stuff going on here in Bendigo.
Margaret tells us that apparently St Arno claims the geographic centre, but I still think of it as the Capitol Theatre. Yeah, well, because you do. And Margaret also mentions the Chico roll, which
look, what can you don't have to say any more than the Chico roll. The fact that you don't have to say any more than Chico roll, everybody knows what it is. I think it's extraordinary. And you just have to look at those 4 columns of the Capitol.
Yes, based on the Chico
which
roll.
are Chico rolls, clearly, with Corinthian, Corinthian Chico roll columns. But, you know, that's confidence in a place. To come to a place that didn't even have a natural source of water and say, I'm going to build it and they will come. And people like Rosemary have built it and they have come. And it's wonderful.
Katrina Nannestad came, and so did Jenny Valentish. Maybe we'll start with Katrina because she's just got the most extraordinary book out. But we'll have a bit of a rundown. Children's author, well, you know, all sorts of author now. Writes humour, action, mystery, and history. Her books include the new one, We Are Wolves, The Girl, the Dog, and the Writer series, the Lottie Perkins series, the Olive Groves series, The Girl Who Brought Mischief, which is just one book. I don't know why that one didn't become a series, but she might explain it to us. And the Red Dirt series and Bungaloo Creek. Some of you people make me tired just thinking about the number of titles. But tell us, I really am very keen because I didn't realise that We Are Wolves, and maybe I can do a little scoop here now. We're hoping that maybe we'll be hear some more about that in May at the Writers' Festival, but I'll talk to you about that a bit later. Tell us about We Are Wolves, Katrina.
So We Are Wolves, I'll just hold it up again so you can see the beautiful, beautiful cover. It's an historical novel, so I've been listening with interest about all the people who've been doing historical research and writing, which is a bit of a change for me because I usually write fairly squarely in the humour, action, adventure sort of area. But it's a story set in East Prussia at the end of World War II, and it's about 3 siblings, Liesl, Otto and Mia, whose family are forced to flee all of a sudden when the Russian army marches in to East Prussia. And in the chaos and the violence that ensues, they find themselves alone. So they're 3 children actually surviving alone in the middle of winter in a terrible blizzard. There's the enemy coming in and they're really not nice to anyone, not even children. And it's the story of how they survive and try to keep together through this really tumultuous time at the end of World War II and in the year following World War II. So it's fiction, of course, but it was actually inspired by the real stories that I stumbled across of the Wolfskinder, or the wolf children. So at the end of World War II, obviously all over Europe there were many, many orphans, But in East Prussia, it's estimated that there were about 50,000 children left orphaned or abandoned or alone at the end of World War II. And some of these children lived for years on their own without any adult support. And they're actually street urchins. They were in the cities, they were living in towns, they were living off the land, but they later became called Wolfskinder or wolf children because a number of them fled into the forests to escape the Russians, and a lot of them lived wild in the forests for a while as well. So, yeah.
Kate, this is your books are very bright and breezy. This one sounds more with good reason. They're I guess this one's for slightly older readers, and therefore you're able to be
Yeah, absolutely. It's more for middle primary, so that 10 to 14-year-old audience. I wouldn't give it to a child under 10. But it wasn't, I didn't plan, I actually didn't plan to change what I was writing. I put a pitch into my publisher about another series, which will come out. It was going to come out this year, but because of werewolves and COVID and that, it's been postponed for a bit. An adventure humour sort of series. And at the time, I'd just been researching something and stumbled across these articles about the Wolfskinder, and I just mentioned the story in passing to my publisher, just really saying, oh, have you heard of the Wolfskinder? Isn't this a fascinating story? And she actually wrote back and said, oh, great, we'd love to hear your story when you fully develop the concept.
Oops.
So I thought, I'm not going to pass down an opportunity to get another book published. So I thought, I better get researching in earnest and get this story idea together. So it really was a bit of a happy accident. It was a fascinating process, but also I found it incredibly challenging as well.
Yeah, you're a real lesson for people who want to know how to make it work, how to make the writing. In fact, most of you people are, hearing your stories, that they're kind of responding to what's there and then creating from there. You didn't at any time think, I can't do this one? It's just, the emphasis is there, but I can't complete. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like you achieved it.
I actually did feel like that, Rosemary, but not until I had the contract, and so then I was obligated.
Yeah.
I did all the research, I found it fascinating, and then I pitched the idea to my publisher, got a contract, really knew exactly what the story was going to be, but when I got writing, I found it very, very difficult because it is a really tough topic, and I had this real fear and this real struggle that I struggled with the whole book through, that I knew I was writing about real people. I think it was Nicole, when you were talking about writing about the Kelly family, and you get really scared because you think, hang on, I'm writing, even though it's fiction, this is based on real people and real lives, and you want to honour that. And I know that these children really struggled. They were victims of war, and it was a horrific time. So I had that thing that I wanted to honour the real life victims, but I was writing for children, so I needed to make it accessible and enjoyable for children. So there was this constant struggle of honouring the stories, but not getting too dark and too horrific with what I shared. So I got to the point, I think, where I learned how to balance, have that ebb and flow, which you need in stories anyway, but between the light and the dark, and to use humour and sweeter moments and sweeter characters to lighten it. But also, I think ultimately I made my story focus in on the hope and friendship and kindness and love. And so I really hope that ultimately my story has become a story about love and the power of love. So,
but there are wolves in it, aren't there? There are wolves, Kate. Tell me there are wolves. Oh,
no, there are no wolves.
Metaphorical.
Okay.
Children were called Wolfskinder, like that, not at that time, but but yeah. And in my story, my children are actually Liesl, Mia and Otto Wolf. And there's a play there because at one stage, Mia's determined that they won't be wild. They're not going to live like wolves. They're not going to be like wild animals. And then she gets to the point where she realises, actually, if we're going to survive here in this really hostile world, sometimes it might be really good to be wild.
I have to go elsewhere for my wolves, though. I'll get my children as
Sorry
wolves.
to disappoint, Rosemary.
No, that's fine. That's as long as I'm glad I know before I start. That's great. We're going to go to Jenny Valentish now, and then we'll go to Margaret Hickey. Hooray! But Jenny, I thought I'd pop you in now because I bet you're always the last because of the V.
I thought maybe you were putting me at the end because I'm about to lower the tone and you just cut me off really quickly if you needed to.
I don't think that's possible. Remember, Sarah's got balls on her head, so we probably can't lower the tone.
Oh, that actually happens in the book, so.
Oh, excellent. There you go. She obviously had been prescient about that. Jenny, you're a journalist and author of the research memoir Woman of Substances, A Journey into Addiction and Treatment. Gee, that book's been really good, really interesting, and taken you all sorts of places to talk about it. But your new book, which I have said to you is perhaps the longest title in the universe, is, and is it still going to be, I'll ask it to check.
No, it's actually got shorter. It's actually got shorter since I sent it to you, but go ahead.
It used to be everything harder than everyone else, what outsiders and the outliers can teach us about endurance. So what is it called now?
Well, it's still called Everything Harder Than Everyone Else, which is a bit of a nod to Motorhead, who had an album called Everything Louder Than Everyone Else. But it's got a rhythm, so I'm hoping people will...
I knew that was Motorhead, yeah.
But also the second part's just the tagline, like you don't have to remember that. What have they changed it to? Something like why some of us push our bodies to extremes, I think. We only changed it about 2 days ago.
Okay. And how's it going?
So I'm on draft 2, which is my favourite. And I mean, so I've handed it all in. I've had the feedback. So this is the really means business draft. And then beyond that, it will just be a couple of tweaks, because the draft I'm finishing in a few weeks will be the one that goes out to catalogues and booksellers and that kind of stuff.
So you've done all the interviews, basically.
Oh, it's
obviously.
Yeah.
Who are these people who put? I mean, am I in it? I put my body to extremes. Look at me.
It's really about endurance and people who push themselves physically and why and how. So my interviewees are a really disparate bunch. There's a neuroscientist who is constantly testing his disgust response. I've got a bit of a list. That's a really hard sentence to say. And what he does is he goes on an eating mission where he's trying to eat as many things that people would consider to be inedible and disgusting as possible around the world. And he also takes as many psychoactive drugs as possible. And he was fascinating. He's even eaten human. And that's in a chapter with performance artists in it, like Stellark is also in that chapter. I interviewed him. And I'm sure you're familiar with Stellark, but if not, he's...
Yes, hung up.
He's suspended himself by hooks for about 10 years, different projects. He's got an ear implanted on his arm. He's had contraptions go into his stomach to film. So he obviously pushes his body to absolute extremes, but has a very detached view of his body. He's not sentimental about it at all. It's not about, grooving on the pain for him or anything. But then there's people like deathmatch wrestlers. They're the kinds of wrestlers who use household implements like ladders and fluorescent lights and the old fashioned kind of dustbins, and they use them in the ring. So it's kind of consensual violence because they're using them on each other, but it's all choreographed. And then there's an ultra runner who used to be very into crack cocaine, but now he's probably one of the most extreme ultra runners in the world. He creates these races that go on for days and days and days on end across deserts and things. And he was kind of where it all started, because the last book was about addiction. And I was thinking, why is it that a lot of people who were really into drug use, when they quit, they immediately fling themselves into marathon running. It's that all or nothing kind of, right, I've stopped doing that. I've got this tireless energy that's going to roam like a spirit that can't go to rest unless I channel it into something else immediately. So he was kind of the first person who started this.
And were the rest difficult to find? Did you, yeah? How did you collect these people?
Yeah, good point. A few of them, I had ideas of who I'd want. So I wanted a bare knuckle boxer. Rather than just a boxer, let's have a bare knuckle boxer. So I'd have to, basically athletes are easiest to contact directly via their Instagram page, because it's not like, you know, I'm a journalist, but it's really easy to get hold of artists and authors and things, publicists and whatnot. There's much more of a gatekeeping thing with athletes, so you've kind of got to sneak in through the back door. I knew I wanted people who engage in BDSM, so I looked them up I found somebody in a Melbourne dungeon, and I wanted a porn star, and I managed to find one who's also a mixed martial arts fighter. So for her, it's two sides of the same coin. It's taking punishment and giving punishment. So anyway, there's a lot of psychology involved. Like, they come with me on this journey of digging into why they think they do the things they do, how they manage to withstand this kind of pain. And then it's kind of what can we mere mortals deduce from this that's useful to us. Because
Jenny,
psychology is kind of like psychology on steroids, so to speak.
Yes. But Jenny, is it more of this thing that you're calling hybrid memoir? Is it related to that? Because that's what you were working on your addiction book. It's a kind of a fusing, and it's a kind of a report. We used to call it reportage, I suppose, because you are in it.
I'd call it immersion journalism. So it's more like along the lines of John Ronson or Louis Theroux, where I am present, but I am not the subject this time. Although I do end up at the end of a book on a parallel journey having a fight. So I am sort of, whenever possible, I am trying for myself, like a human guinea pig, to do the things that my interviewees do.
Right. You be careful, all right? You look after yourself. That sounds fantastic. When's it due?
Well, it's out on June 1st.
Right. Oh, really? Because our festival's in May. I need to talk to you about that.
That's doable.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have advanced copies. We can help.
Exactly. Let's sneak her in. Getting some comments from people who are from our writers who are tuning into. They sound like they've got a bit hungry. Some of them. It must be getting close to dinner time. Bringing us to Margaret, who's Wanaka. Hi, Margaret. Thanks for being so patient. You've won a couple of emerging writers prizes, the Grace Marion Prize and the Victorian Regional Writing Prize. And you write plays. You're a teacher. You're a presenter. You did a PhD at La Trobe. Another encore. Here we go again, you lot. Yours was on landscape in Australian literature. I think I was mentioning landscape before, so it's probably you I was thinking of. Your new book is Rural Dreams, and it's a collection of short stories about people living in the country. It's probably a good place for us to wind back to. And it certainly sounds as though it's striking chords. It's doing very, very well. And I think it's possibly to do with the time when city people are a bit more conscious of what it's like to live in the country. So tell us about Rural Dreams.
Yes, so thank you. And it's been so lovely listening to everyone. It's a real privilege to hear what everyone else is doing, all the writing, so thank you. Rural Dreams, here it is. So that was released on October the 1st this year, and it's a collection of short stories. They're mainly award-winning stories that were put together, and I cobbled them over 10 years, and I looked at all the stories and I realised that most of them had won awards. and or had been published in literary journals. And I thought I could have a collection here. So I sent it off to a publisher, and just a small publisher, Midnight Sun in Adelaide. They're terrific. And about 8 months later, I got a call back saying that they were interested in publishing it. So it was fabulous. And yeah, it was released on October the 1st, and it's already gone to the second print run. So I'm kind of, I'm really blown away by how well it's gone. And I think you're right, Rosemary. I think that perhaps in this time of maybe this strange and disturbing year that we have, that people are reflecting on their lives and where they live, and maybe looking, you know, to an Arcadia, perhaps outside the metropolis. I'm not sure.
We often have stories about country people that are a bit sort of finding the, you know, the goat ate the something and the haystack. But you've done, it's about people really, isn't it? It's about, is it about different sorts of people that you've met?
Yes. Yeah, it's people focused, and any one of us who have grown up in the country, and I've lived 40 of my 48 years in very small country towns, although I was in Bendigo, and I went to Catholic College Bendigo. Yeah, so I'm going back there to catch up with friends next weekend actually. But anyone who has lived in the country knows that those stereotypes of country people are infuriating. And country towns. Well, the other day I was with my friend who is a doctor, and we had these friends up from Melbourne, and I said, "Oh, this is Rachel, she's a doctor." And the friend from Melbourne said, "Oh, you're a doctor?" And we just said, you know, yes, Kath, people get in the country too, you know. So it's about people who live in small country towns, and all the sort of you know, living on the land, the problems that they have, and the yearnings that they have, and that eternal push and pull to the cities, I guess. And it's also about white belonging, and how yearning to belong to a country that was never ceded. So it's all those things. So I was surprised when I found out that it was doing so well in Melbourne and Sydney, because I thought, oh, they're going to read this, and, you know, it's not all rolling hills and gentle streams, but nevertheless, I'm pleased, and I feel very fortunate.
Midnight Sun are very, very good. And somebody's just mentioned in the comments about, you know, the small publishers willing to take things on, and I can't agree more. But I also think that you know, the quality of the small publishing is really improving, and that's a result of the changes to the possibilities to publish, which I guess, Pam, you're discovering, and you're also discovering that, you know, you can find people to work with. And look at Sally and Chris, you know, working together, and this is top quality stuff that's happening right here. But I'm going to tell you a little story, and then I'm going to ask you each about the stories from Rural Dreams. The graders were on our road a couple of weeks ago, and I tried to get off to the side of the road, but the water truck was coming. This is on a dirt road, and the bloke just kept coming towards me in this enormous water truck, and I couldn't pull off because there was a ditch. So I just stopped, and then he came really, 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 really close and squirted the front of my car with his water truck, and then went past, and then I just stopped and was a bit shocked, and then he sort of reversed back and said, "What's your problem?" And I said, "You're coming straight." I must admit, I was probably a bit, I'll give you the nice version where I'm good. And I said to him, "You're going to hit me, why did you just keep coming?" And he said, "You should have pulled off to the side of the road." And I said, "We usually negotiate this, and I couldn't pull off, and why are you shouting at me?" And he said, "I bet you're a newcomer." And I said to him, "Well, what's that got to do with it?" And basically it was an us and them. He was saying, I was born here. You're clearly someone who's come here in the last 10 years. And I'm looking here, and we've got a lot. I mean, you, Margaret, were sort of born and bred. Christie, I don't know about. But what's your story about moving to the country? Let's do a whip around, True?
Oh, my story. I never left. I came half an hour up the road and then went back. I was born in Castlemaine. So, yeah, that's why, you know, the pictures, I forgot to show up before, pictures of, you know, Bert Lester's dam up in Norwood Hill, which was the, you know, swimming club for Castlemaine, where they went all over the state and practiced in there. That's sort of really quite special and part of Dad's story. Part of, oops, I've given it away, haven't I?
You just did. I was just about to say, you've given it away at last. Yeah.
Part of this special, this special family.
Yeah.
Infuriating at times, but really lovely. But also, landscape and the area is so important because it comes from unique perspectives of those of us who've never left or those of us who've left and come back, but bring different experiences to you know, our living in a particular area and relating to the community and the different communities that we build, whether it's through the writing community, whether it's through small press publishers, whether it's through, you know, the local shopkeepers or at the market, the community markets. You know, I think it's the landscape is, the people form part of the landscape as much as, you know, the beautiful bush and the gullies and the dams in the areas. Yeah.
Pam says she was born in Bendigo, and but she thinks that it's getting closer to Melbourne. Is that right, Pam?
Well, it is, isn't it? It used to take, I don't know, nearly 3 hours in the car, and now it takes 1 3/4. So, we've got the best of both worlds here, I reckon.
You don't find an us and them with people who move in later?
Oh, absolutely, I do, and I know people have. Yeah, and I'm a us, aren't I? So I can speak from privileged background, but I've known people who, you know, recently who've moved away who couldn't cope with the cliques that are in Bendigo is a regional city, not a country town, but they still couldn't cope with the cliques. So it's interesting, and we have to be aware of that, I think.
Katrina, you have, how long have you been in Bendigo?
I've been in Bendigo for 20 years now.
Ages.
And I'm a country girl always, from country New South Wales. I grew up in central western New South Wales, so we came to Bendigo 20 years ago for my husband's work. And I think Bendigo will be home for the rest of our lives. We love it here, and it's, we feel very settled. But the clique thing, it's always hard when you move. Like, we've moved around a lot, and I think it is really important to be aware that when we've lived somewhere for a long time, we are privileged, and we do have established friendships and networks, and, you know, it's really important to embrace newcomers, isn't it? And to, you know, include them. And they might be your next best friend too. They might be the most wonderful person you've ever met.
Margaret's saying she used to call Castlemanians Castlemaniacs, which I think is still done. Jenny, I'm actually surprised that Jenny's, I don't know why, but you've lasted.
I've been here 11 years in Castlemaine, yeah. I never felt an us versus them at all, but I know that people maybe who've come up from Melbourne and started businesses, that sometimes they have, especially if they've taken over a beloved pub or cafe or something. But personally, I've felt really welcome. And whenever I go home to England and I come back and I land at Tullamarine and come up the Calder, I feel 100% this is my home, without any doubt, and probably always will be. So it's a great feeling.
Over to Sarah.
Yeah, look, like as I said, I came here first in 1990. No, I first came here on a holiday with my parents, and what I remember was that there was a fantastic caravan park where Bunnings is now, and my sister was in debt for about 3 years of pocket money because they had trampolines, and so that's what we remember about Bendigo. And then 88, I passed through when I was doing some volunteer work, and it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the only thing that was open was the Safeway on the high street. And I remember thinking, oh, you know, why would you live here? And then, of course, fell in love with a 6th generation Bendigonian, and I now have 3 7th generation Bendigonian sons who have grown in my womb. And I have got my finger in more pies in Bendigo than my housework really cares me to be in. And I love this town. I absolutely, this provincial city, it's, you put your hand up and people will have you on board. And I think I look back and I can say, yes, I missed out on a whole lot of things because I came here instead of staying in Melbourne, but actually I didn't, because in Melbourne, I think you can put your hand up for things and you've got to wait. You're either too young, you're too female, you're too nutty, you're too something to be on a committee or be given responsibility. Whereas here, you can put up your hand for anything and most people will have you, as you know, Rosemary. And if they don't want to have you, just start it yourself. And people will come. And yeah, look, I think it's and I can, what I really love is I can see how much it's changed over the years. I think it's the vibrant, it's become more and more vibrant over the years. And my city friends who come up, who I think they thought I lived on the country and I came into town to get my post, you know, all these funny stereotypes of what it is to live in the country, they come up and they say, wow, this is really sophisticated and you've got a fantastic gallery and great wineries and wonderful shopping and you know,
Sally was asking Jenny why Castlemaine, and I've asked the same question to you, Sally.
I came up to get away from people because so my partner and I live 10 minutes walk away from each other and we have 6 kids between the two of us across 2 houses, and so to get a quiet moment to write was completely impossible. So I found a bush block just outside of Castlemaine with a renovated shed on it, and I thought that's going to be my writer's retreat. That's where I'm going to go to get away from everything, look out over the hills and the kangaroos. But what's happened is I've actually tapped into this incredible community. And so I come from Melbourne to get away from everybody. And then I find all these incredible people in Bendigo and Castlemaine that now I want to hang out with. So now I don't get any writing done, pretty much.
I beg to differ.
Only during lockdown. And I couldn't get up. Yeah.
Exactly. Christie, you're out a bit too. Are you born and bred?
No, so I'm in Castlemaine at the moment, and like Jenny, I've been here for about 11 years. I grew up in northeast Victoria. Someone else was from northeast Victoria, Margaret. Yeah, so I spent my like teenage years in good old Wodonga High, and in Melbourne pretty much for 20 years from my teenage through my 20s, which was fun. It was fun, and then just needed the country again once I hit my 30s. And it's the landscape thing. I feel like I was a bit of a wild animal child. I spent a lot of time by myself down the creek and in the forest, and yeah, the city had been a fun adventure, but it had kind of lost that wild heterogeneity that you can play with in a landscape. So
Katrina, that sounds very much like your wild kids. That's really interesting that we're, you know, that the kid who needs. I mean, I know you're a little group of kids, but the kid who needs the space. I suspect a lot of these faces we've got in front of us here are going, yeah, that's me.
I moved from 8 acres, creek, paddocks when I was 14 into a tiny workers' cottage in Richmond. And it was so for me there's this real these two sides of things, because I really loved being in the city, not for that first bit, but I loved being in the city, and I loved being in the country, but they feel like quite different entities in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Nicole, we've heard about you've basically been country most of your life. Have you seen an us and them with people moving into the areas that you've lived in?
Yeah, I grew up regionally my whole life, so I was in the northeast to start with, and then I spent many years in Castlemaine. We actually lived in Harcourt, so I worked in Castlemaine, and then I moved over to Ballarat, or now Beaufort, to marry a Kelly. And it is, and I remember thinking as a kid in Wangaratta, and it was very quite conservative, and we moved to Castlemaine, and I was just blown away with, I could wear a crazy hat, or I could be eclectic, and there was this real sense of individuality that came through. So even though we're talking about rural communities, the fact that they're also different, and embracing those differences is really key, I think. And as a teacher, being an advocate as a regional teacher and a regional writer, and inspiring our regional kids to strive and dream big is really, really important, I think, because there's a lot of kids that get stereotyped as rural kids when they don't realize that the world is actually open to them. So I think things like this, seeing, look at all of these regional people and what they can achieve is, it's inspiring.
Margaret, I reckon that there's a difference between just listening to Nicole talk and also, Jenny and Sally. I reckon there's a difference between a small town and Bendigo, because Bendigo, I reckon, if you do the funny hat and unless you're Sarah, and you see something, you see some people walking down the streets of Malden, Castlemaine, Harcourt, where you just think, how are you managing? And they're fine. They're just part of the community. Have you got some of those in your rural dream?
I would firmly put Bendigo in the city category. For me, absolutely I would, and the people I know who live in small country towns would as well. For us, Bendigo is a city, and the students I teach, and the Bendigo La Trobe, for example, is a big university to go to. So yeah, I would agree. But then again, I agree that it's a very different place to Castlemaine. They're only such a short distance apart, but they're very different. But also Castlemaine, I think, it's called North Northcote, for a reason. And it is, and that's wonderful. There's a lot of city people coming there, but in terms of regionality and rural towns, it'd be interesting to see a real definition, but I do put Bendigo in the city category. Yeah.
And how about Kerry Greenwood's just done a death in Dalesford, which I have to admit, she'd already killed some people off in Castlemaine, and now she's killed some people off in Dalesford. So I don't think she's done any deaths in Bendigo yet, but we'll have to
wait.
Yeah.
So I'm also a librarian in Castlemaine, and I have to say, so as Christie, I haven't really felt the divide. Like Jenny, I felt quite welcomed here, but through my work, Castlemaine does have a bit of a two-layer community going on, I reckon. There is that kind of Northcote identity, and I think that's from all the artists that set up here in the 70s, and that's kind of created this culture here, which is very open to all that stuff. But there is another culture that predates that and sits alongside it. And Rosemary, that story you were telling about, I'm sure you're a blow-in or a new person. Because we deal with the whole spectrum of the community through the library. I do feel that bubbling thing, and I think it's the thing we're on both sides here. What we're saying is, the city people feel that we're kind of backward and we don't have that sophistication. So, and I think that's what this other layer are feeling when this kind of new intellectual bohemian crowd comes in and then starts trying to talk loudly about values. I don't know, I'm just quite sensitive to that.
No, absolutely, and it's a fabulous dialogue that does happen, I think, but I do think also, I mean, Bendigo is always, when I first came, Castlemaine sort of went a writers' festival in Bendigo, so, and it's still quite difficult to draw them up the highway. They'll be much happier, and I'm not just talking Castlemaine, from Kyneton and Woodend and maybe not Malden. Malden quite well, don't you, Cecile? It's a sort of a halfway place. Well, it sits between the two places.
I do wonder if COVID and this disaster of a year is going to change anything around all of this, because there's discussion around the fact that a lot of Melburnians and a lot of city people generally do not want to go through what they went through this year again. And so I think that that idea of moving to regional centres and even, you know, country towns that are in between cities or regional towns is probably going to take on a lot more appeal. So it'd be interesting to see if there is, I mean, who knows what the effects of COVID are going to be for many things, but it'd be interesting to see if our society or communities makeup changes because of, you know, people thinking, right, well, if we are to go through this again, where do I want to be living? And now that we've all realised we can work from anywhere, I mean, writers knew that anyway, and so did, you know, us lowly editors who sit at home by us all day anyway. But those other people, you know, everyone has worked and schooled from home, so now we can. So
much more acceptable.
Yeah, I think that COVID's going to perhaps change the landscape a little bit for where we choose to live and be happy.
How we work. And when I look at this screen, I actually can see that the you know, people making it work, and people now understanding that it's not something you have to be. The publishers get it too. The industry gets it. The bookshops get it. I think they're now. You know, let's not let them fall backwards, because they will. And I think that Melbourne's the centre of the world. We've got to finish up, because this conversation has been remarkable. It's been a set of people that has really fed our thoughts and our ideas and our imaginations and our the talent and the skills is just absolutely extraordinary, and I reckon we should do more of it myself. And thank you very much for encouraging us at Bendigo Writers Festival to do it. As I said to you earlier, it was a bit daunting. I hope I mentioned that Kirsten Kraut's on a plane, or she would have joined us too. So hopefully we'll catch up with her again, and I do hope that that you people will join us again, because your generosity in joining us this evening it has been remarkable, and I applaud you all. To those who have logged on, this recording will also be available on our Facebook and on our website, and any information I can give about the books that we've talked about too, I'll post there as well. So to you all, many thanks. Thank you for a wonderful conversation. I hope that that your holiday season and your Christmas goes well, and I look forward to seeing some of those books that we've talked about today. Thank you, and good night to you all.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Bye.